1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
We Ooh, finally we made it. After I was feeling for the last 3 minutes as a real amateur. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not an amateur, but it's not nice to feel like one. Especially when, for the first time in this podcast, I bring someone that I met very recently. So before I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, ladies and gentlemen, mom, auntie, and the rest of the family that are listening out there, and some people that might join into the following of the last meeting of the week. Welcome. I'm very grateful that you're doing this. My name is Fernando. On my left, I have Filippo Sebastio, which is the engine of this podcast. And in front of me, I have a very interesting gentleman. I had a lot of fun researching you. First of all, because it's an aesthetic exercise. You are into a lot of very nice things. And I think you are a portrait of what this city can be in the future. In the past 5 years, maybe I could say, Hong Kong, which was one of the most sparkling cities in Asia, in the world, kind of went down into a sort of gray, boring phase. And it's super revitalizing finding people that is giving the total, complete opposite message. Shivang, welcome to the last meeting of the week. How was the week?
The week was great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's super exciting to be here. You know, as a fellow podcast junkie myself, it's always really fun to see people's different takes on podcasts and the kind of content they create. And so it's really exciting to be on the other side of the chair, if you will, because, you know, I also hosted a lot of podcasts myself, and it's really exciting to be in this chair. My week was great. It was pretty hectic. We've had a few shows open recently. We had a show open 2 weeks ago, which you came for, then a show open this past week. And so I guess we're all just really tired and exhausted, but I think we're looking forward to what's to come. And most importantly, as you know, in Hong Kong, we're also very much looking forward to the weather cooling down because it is hot outside.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing to see that the heat hadn't left. And for a few days, it was like, okay, finally we get into the nice boat party season. And then suddenly today, it's like, so terribly.
Yes.
It's, I would say, smashing hot. You feel like you are smashed onto the ground.
Oh, very much so. It's, you know, it can be demotivating when you walk outside and you feel like, even though you just got out of the shower, you walk outside, you feel like you need to go back inside and take another one. You know, it's that hot. Someone once told me in a Hong Kong summer, this is when Lang Kwai Fong was cool, right? In my opinion, it still is somewhat cool, and I'm hoping to bring Lang Kwai Fong back again, make it sexy again. But anyways, they got off at the top of Lang Kwai Fong. They walked down to go to one of the bars there. They were so hot and pissed off on the walk that they just got into a taxi at the bottom and went home. And I think that's what the Hong Kong heat can do to you on a hot day.
Yes. I normally mark the unlivable season when, for the first time since, you know, in the year, I start sweating on the way down.
Yeah.
That's extremely frustrating. I have literally 50 meters from the door of my building to the next taxi stand, and I get sweaty, and it's downhill, and it's terrible. How do you keep the high level of energy that you convey, having lived and having been brought up in a city like this?
That's a really good question. So a few different factors, I think, play into that. Number one, in my opinion, Hong Kong itself is a source of energy, right? When you're walking around, it's something that goes from the pavement through the soles of your feet and into the rest of your body. That's one of the reasons why I think Hong Kong is a magical place, because literally everything here is made out of electricity. Right? Why do you think we have so many neon signs everywhere in Hong Kong? Because the city is built on electricity. And trust me, I care very much about the environment, but at the same time, I love this electric feeling that we have in Hong Kong. And I think also, obviously, a lot of it is metaphorical, but I think that's what allows for myself personally to have this drive. Now, in addition to that, I would also say I was sent to school in the United States when I was 11. So from when I was 11 to when I was 23, I was studying in the US. And while I was there, I was exposed to a lot of different cultures, I guess mainly an American culture, which is very broad. But at the same time, for me, the cross reference between a Hong Kong culture as well as the Indian culture, which is my background, and this American one, which is a hot pot, a melting pot of different cultures and things like that. For some reason, I think that blend of all these different influences in my life is also what gives me a lot of energy, or perhaps motivation, which energy is a byproduct of, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. When you get to, when you're 11, you go to the US, you've been 11 years here. Growing up as a non-Hong Konger, let's say, a Hong Konger, but you know what I mean. I'm asking this because I'm very curious. I have a small daughter. Her consciousness is about being a Hong Konger. She says, Dad is from Spain, Mom is from Italy, I'm from Hong Kong. How was it growing up in a place like this without having a family that looks like,
right,
Asian characteristics, or let's say Far East Asian characteristics? How is that experience?
So honestly, growing up, it was confusing, especially because, here's the thing. At first, when I was growing up, it was confusing because also, us Indians were very communal in a sense, where we interact a lot within our own community. So for example, growing up, a lot of my close family friends, as well as my childhood playgroup, majority of the kids in that playgroup were Indian. So for me, I thought Hong Kong was like, a part of India in a way. As I got a little bit older, like 5-6 years old, and I was exposed to more of Hong Kong, that's when things started to get a little bit confusing. And I guess what I was really confused about is how come, we live in Hong Kong but we're originally from India, and at home we speak a mix of Hindi and English, right? Okay. And so I didn't really understand that, and I think I was too young to understand why my grandparents on my father's side left India, because my dad was born in Hong Kong as well. Okay. Right? And so when I was younger, it was definitely a little bit confusing, but as I got older, it became more so of, I guess, something that I was very proud of, because first of all, Hong Kong is a very international city, right? I mean, I remember going to elementary school with kids from all over the world, Australia, different parts of Africa, all over Europe, North America, especially Canadians in my school. And then, of course, a lot of Indians. And then not only Hong Kong kids, like Hong Kong local Chinese kids, but also Korean kids, Japanese kids, Singaporeans, you name it, So Hong Kong is very international. And again, when I got older, I realized that I was very lucky to have this exposure to a different city and a different culture that I can then tie in with my Indian upbringing in some sense, or my Indian culture. And again, I think it goes back to what I was saying a few moments ago, which is being exposed to different cultures and ideologies, I think is very beneficial in the long run, because it widens your horizons and it makes you more open-minded. So I actually think it's a very good thing. However, there is a little bit of time when someone grows up for them to be able to really understand it. Also, I grew up, I was 5-6 years old, like 20 plus years ago. So back then and now, things are very different. I think in general, people are more tolerant now, especially kids. I think it's part of the education system, and I think that there's benefits or pros and cons to that. But in the long run, I think now, for example, I'm super excited to hear, what your family's experience is like with your daughter, because I'm sure she sees being a Hong Konger as something that she's super proud of. And actually, when I went to school in the US when I was 11 years old, I felt like I was an ambassador for Hong Kong, telling people what Hong Kong is, because a lot of people didn't really know in the US, what Hong Kong is. Americans sometimes, but they thought, for example, Hong Kong was a part of Tokyo, and obviously we know that those are such different things, right? Tokyo is a city in Japan, whereas Hong Kong is a city here in the southern region of China as a special administrative region, so on and so forth. And once I told someone in the US, oh yeah, I came to the school by boat because we don't have planes there yet. and they're like, oh wow, that's amazing. And little do they know that Hong Kong is a world-class aviation hub. You know what I mean? So obviously I mess around with people, but at the same time I also spread, I think, the magic that Hong Kong has to offer. And actually what's cool is that a lot of my friends in the US would come and visit me in Hong Kong. And a few of them loved it so much that they're still constantly looking for ways to move here because they came here and they're like, whoa, this place is indescribable. And that's exactly how I see and feel it too.
Where were you in America?
I was in the East Coast for 8 years, Massachusetts for 4 years, Connecticut for 4 years, Denver, Colorado for 1 year, and then Los Angeles, California for 3.
Oh, right. That's a big, we have a similar experience, and I have similar stories as well.
Oh, really?
I spent a year in Los Angeles, a year in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
That was the best.
Nice.
And then I had a relationship with Miami because my family moved there.
Okay.
Yeah, in my case, they were inviting me. I had this super fun hockey player friend. We would live together. And one time, he saw me. I think he saw me a little bit sad because I was missing Spain. He told me, Fernando, let me cheer you up. Let's go eat something from your country. And he took me to a taco place.
Oh my god!
And that was amazing. and I love him because it was, the intention was so genuine that I didn't even contradict him. Yeah, there are so many things. Filippo.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I wanted to ask. By 22 years, lived as many years outside Hong Kong than in Hong Kong. How was coming back to Hong Kong then?
Let me before just say, because Filippo's mic was stolen. So for the people that didn't listen, it's he's talking about this life divided almost, with more time away from Hong Kong than being in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, Filippo. So actually, by the time I moved back to Hong Kong, I had spent 12 years in the US, and I left when I was 11. So I'd actually spent more time in the US than in Hong Kong in terms of where I was spending majority of the year, at least. So it was an adjustment, but also at the same time, after being away from home for 12 years, I would say there's more excitement that outweighed any other feeling or emotion. For me, I was really excited to come back to Hong Kong. I had a job, an internship lined up for when I was coming back to Hong Kong, and it was in video production, which is basically what was my biggest hobby at the time. I was making a lot of videos in LA, and I lived in Shanghai for one summer. I was making a lot of videos there. And so working at a video production company was really exciting, and that's what I was looking most forward to coming back to Hong Kong about. Obviously being close to family as well, and then, also being an adult in Hong Kong and having a work life experience here as opposed to just being on summer holiday or being a student in Hong Kong. So that's what I was really looking forward to. The adjustment was more so not about coming back to Hong Kong, but no longer, I think, being a student, because I think when you leave college and you have such a good time and you have so much free time and, you don't have to hold yourself accountable for some of the decisions that you make, such as skipping class or whatever. You can't do that when you're working. You have to go to work and you have to answer to emails and things like that. So I would say there was more of an adjustment with that overshadowed the adjustment of coming back to Hong Kong. So the adjustment coming back to Hong Kong was actually super exciting. And again, I had a lot of other friends from around the world that were moving back to Hong Kong at that time. Even some friends from university were moving to Hong Kong. So we were all like, yeah, we're going to hang out in Hong Kong. We're going to go out, this and that. So it was super exciting.
I mean, I think it's a very welcome city here. It's in my case, it's the only city in which I moved because I wanted to move here. And if you are really open and embrace all of the dynamism and craziness, I think it's super rewarding. When you come back, I'm skipping a little bit from your early ages to when you came to Hong Kong. You came and you started doing video production. You mentioned that you were doing that a lot in LA.
Yes.
What type of video production were you focusing on?
When I was doing it in LA and in university,
yes,
it was mostly like a type of vlogging, but I would like to believe that it wasn't the type of vlogging where it's like, hey, YouTubers, how's it going? Make sure you hit that like button and smash subscribe. It wasn't like that type. It was more so like, for me, my biggest inspirations were Vice when I was in high school and in college. And I guess the style of that was to me very raw style journalism. So that's what I was really excited about. And so, for example, I'd go around and interview people, in LA and be like, hey, what do you think of this that's going on? And they would tell me, and then I would also try to crack a few jokes because of a little bit of dabbling in stand-up comedy as well. So I would say it was that kind of video. But then the reason why I say vlogging is because a lot of it was self-produced. I was holding sometimes the camera like this, and it was a lot of fun. But again, I think for me, the interest for that fizzled out and spun into a different form of video production, which I started working on when I came to Hong Kong, which was for corporate clients.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what type of video was that?
So the first production house I worked for, they did a lot of hero content. Hero video content meaning like, those 30-second ads, or I guess back then it was a minute long, but everyone's attention span is so short now that they have to be like 10 seconds. But anyways, we were working on those kinds of videos. So, I mean, their clients were huge clients from all around the world. And they would do like these really high budget pieces that would be TV commercials. So mostly TVCs, things like that. And what I did for them, because I was an intern at this particular production house, we were basically given a camera, a bunch of gear, and we were pushed off into Hong Kong. And they were like, go out, shoot something, come back, edit it, and impress us. And that was actually really cool because they basically gave us free reign to produce whatever we wanted. And one of the videos I made was a video that's like the life of an octopus card. And so basically an octopus card going through Hong Kong on the Star Ferry and the MTR. And it was with Mozart's, I forget which one, but one of his tracks. And I thought it was a really good video. And it was just really fun to make. And again, the fact that they just, pushed us out into Hong Kong and were like, go make something. That was really exciting. And for me, who I guess is driven in a more creative way, for me, that was amazing because it was like, we can do whatever we want. We have some amazing gear to work with. Let's go have fun. The only thing is that, going back to what we were saying earlier, it was in the summer, so we were sweating bullets the entire time. But at that time, when you're so young, you're like, yeah, I'm, sweating. I'm bleeding over my work. And that was exciting.
Yeah, I think it's super courageous from, the point of your managers to allow you to do that. I think it's amazing nowadays. Instead of just being there and script everything, prepare everything, just go guerrilla style and go out there and create something
very
fresh.
Much so. It's actually, I kind of stole or borrowed that from this work experience. And now with my own team, I tell them to do the same thing. Like whenever we do exhibitions, video content plays a big role in our gallery, right? We do a lot of video content with artists and then also for our exhibitions and things like that. And oftentimes to my teammates, I'm like, go shoot something that you think is relevant to this artist or to this exhibition. And I think what I've noticed is that it has a lot of benefits. It also has a few negative aspects. Like, for example, sometimes my teammates have mentioned that a little bit of direction would be good, and I completely understand that. But I guess for me, the way I see it is that the blank canvas, so to speak, can also unearth some really interesting things if you're willing to put your mind to it and go out and find something that's worthy of sharing with our audience, and that's exactly what they've done. So kudos to them for that.
Actually, I don't want to drop this miss this opportunity to comment on that, because one of the notes that I did when I was studying your Young Soy and VAIN was the fact that you do great work in helping the artists communicate who they are and what they do, why they do what they do. And then this connects also with this new reality of AI developed tools that they change the nature of the relationship between the buyer of art and the creation of art. And my vision, and I would love for you to comment on this, is that nowadays artists will have to be something more than just art creators. They have to communicate. Mm-hmm. They have to sell themselves. It's not about, I am an anonymous, shy artist. I put a piece on the wall and people have to love it or hate it. No. You need to, people are buying you. So is this something that you have in your mind, or? How do you
Yes.
approach this?
Well, I mean, I can go on about this, and this is something that we think about all the time, you know. So, I mean, running the gallery, first of all, a lot of the times, the way that a gallery operates is basically as a sales and marketing arm for an artist, right? Oftentimes, that's how a lot of people see the role of a gallery. In addition to that, they can also negotiate brand collaborations for the artist and better terms, things like that, as well as not only hosting their exhibitions and getting them into the right art fairs, but then also a lot of it comes down to helping them communicate and sell their work so that they don't have to worry about that. They can focus on their work. Now, at the same time, an artist has to be able to sell themselves a little bit. They don't necessarily have to be an independent artist. In fact, I think there's more benefits to an artist working with a gallery than working independently, which I can get to a little bit more later. But again, an artist still needs to be able to sell themselves to a gallery, for example, right? I mean, we're a small gallery and we're still grassroots, and I would say still in our infancy. However, let's say a big gallery, if an artist wants to go work with a big gallery, they have to be able to convince the gallery that they're the right artist. And, you know, sometimes the work is enough, but oftentimes it's not, because oftentimes the way galleries look at artists is, like you said, you know, it's not about believing in the art, it's about believing in the artist, right? You want to know that this artist, and this is how we approach it, is that we want to know that the artist is not in it for a short run, or they're not in it for the money. They're in it because they have this itch in their body that they need to communicate something to the world, and their specific medium, their artistic medium, is the only way that they know how to do it. And that for us is exciting. Like, being an artist is not for the faint of heart. It is a very difficult, grueling lifestyle, and oftentimes the outcome is not what one might have hoped for, right? Because of how competitive it is. So when we meet artists that can stomach that and still push through all that, force that's going against them, then that makes us really excited, and it makes us want to work with them. You know, so for us, the artist is super important. Now, do they have to be able to sell themselves? To a degree, yes, but not fully, because when it comes to the gallery, that's our job as well. It's our job to communicate to our audience why this artist deserves a place, not only in art history, but history itself, right? And when it comes to artists focusing on the communication, sometimes they focus on it too much, that it takes them away from working on their projects, whatever that may be. So for us, it's up to us to spend the right time figuring out the right channels to communicate the artist to their audience and to market and advertise them. And then we need the artists to help us out with certain components of it. But at the same time, we don't need them to focus on it. So I'll give you an example. When it comes to exhibitions, right? In terms of doing the press release, getting the right attention, making sure we have collectors coming in, that's the gallery's job. However, once we have everyone there, we would ask the artist to do an artist talk, right? And the artist talk is really important, because that's when the artist can literally communicate exactly what they want in their own words, in their own tone of voice, what it is that their work represents. And then that's also why we do a lot of video content, because for us, when we first started, we were predominantly focusing on digital distribution, so focusing on an online gallery, right? And the way that an online gallery could communicate effectively is through video content. Video content, again, you can condense 3 pages of written material into a 1.5-minute long video. And as someone who's interested in an artist, what would you rather do? Would you rather sit there reading 3 pages of content, or would you rather watch a video where you can actually hear the artist's voice? You can see them, you know, working on some of their work. You get a better idea of who they are, right? Video content emotionally communicates more than anything written ever could, in my honest opinion. And then in addition to that, video content is easier to get distribution in different pockets of the globe, thanks to social media or Instagram, the world's largest online art gallery, as I say, is what it is. It's a necessary evil in our world, and we have to use it. And again, let's say there's this artist whose work we think is super relevant in India, right? Then we can target the video to an audience in India that are into art. And that way we can get this artist exposure in India and they would watch her video content, and maybe that might be enough for them to go and explore more about the artist. But there's no way you can do that with written content, so to speak, you know? And then again, when it comes to the video, we have to be able to help produce the video. We have to be able to help get into the right channels. But then when we're shooting the actual video, we need the artist to step up and to answer the questions thoughtfully and authentically. And that's when it comes to them being able to communicate effectively.
Filippo, you wanted to say?
Quickly, I think we jumped quite
Yes.
already in the artist management, but why don't you introduce a little bit the two galleries?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Absolutely. So I run an art gallery called Young Soy Gallery, and I started with my business partner, Alexander Glavatz-Eden. So together, him and I co-founded Young Soy Gallery in 2020 in the summer. And it actually started off because in the beginning of 2020, when COVID was like 2 cases a day, 3 cases a day in Hong Kong, everyone was freaking out. And Art Basel canceled Art Basel 2020 in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And Art Basel is not exactly like, you know, the most important cultural event that happens in Hong Kong. It's important, but also everything that happens around it is also very important. All those other small little events, things like that. So when Art Basel was canceled, everything was canceled alongside with it. And so in our group chat, Xander and I started chatting, you know, with our other friends. And we were like, oh, this is such nonsense. Like, you know, Hong Kong really needed it at the time because not only was COVID playing a huge negative role in Hong Kong at the time when it should not have been because it was 2 cases a day, we were just coming off of 6 months of protests, right, in 2019. And so, you know, having these art-related events, we thought were very important because it's what allows people to not only interact with art, but also with each other. And, you know, there is some sort of therapy in that. And it allows us as a city to heal and move forward, but they cancel it, and that felt quite drastic to us. So we decided to have our own version. As a joke, we called it F.ArtBasel or Fart Basel, and the F stood for free, or it was up to interpretation, as some thought it stood for something else. And then we made a video. The video went viral on LinkedIn, meaning it got like 23 views or something, you know. But funnily enough, from that video where we both dressed up as like these fancy Berlin art aficionados, we're like, wow, art is like so important right now. You know, like art's not just for cool people like us, it's for everyone. We made that video, and then funnily enough, through LinkedIn, it got shared to Instagram, and then a bunch of these sponsors started reaching out to us, and they were like, hey, this is really cool. Can we sponsor it? Can we send you a few cases of beer? Can we send you cases of our Swedish water? And then all these artists started reaching out to us, and they're like, this is so cool. Can I please participate? No one in Hong Kong has ever given me an opportunity, and this is how I'd love to, you know, show my work. And then Xander and I are like, okay, well, it seems like we're onto something. Let's just run with it and see where it goes. Now, we had organized everything. We found a space on Old Bailey Street. We had the artists, the sponsors. Everything was ready to go. Unfortunately, a week before it happened, it was supposed to happen, COVID cases in Hong Kong went from 2 to 3 a day to like 36 a day. And at the time, I don't know if you guys remember, but in Hong Kong, everyone was freaking out. So Xander and I were like, all right, we better postpone this. And we kept postponing it. And then we realized that it had become a lot bigger than just our initial joke, and that all these artists, I guess, got some glimpse of hope from it. And so from there, we decided to spin it into an online gallery. And actually at the time, it was called Not So Fugly, which I got a lot of pushback against, and understandably so. But I was
in that case, the F is not for free.
In that case, the F is not for free. Absolutely not. I think you know what it means. So we did the online gallery. Then another wave of COVID came, and we went to go look at some real estate in Hong Kong for fun. We found a space in Ap Lei Chau that looked like it was fitted out as a gallery. It had track lighting, white walls. It was more or less perfect. And then we asked them what the price was. It was way too high. We gave them a lower price, and we said, if you can tell us by tonight, we'll take it. Thinking that obviously they would not. They called us back an hour later, and they're like, all right, it's yours. And then Xander and I were like, you know, shit. Like,
now we need to pedal. They gave us the bike. Now we need to pedal the
yeah,
bike.
exactly.
Yes.
So then we basically signed this lease, and we didn't have any money coming in. So then it made us take it a lot more seriously, and it made us start doing physical exhibitions. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. And luckily, we did quite well in the beginning. And we got to work with really cool artists, many of which we are still representing today. And then in 2022, we moved from Appalachia Chow to Central. So now our exhibition space is on Staunton Street. This artist named Simon Birch in Hong Kong, he has like this car park building that he has, he's been there for a long time, and he got to know us through what we were doing. And then he has been very supportive, and he lets us use his space. So we rented out the ground floor, and now we're taking over the first floor as well, where we're going to move our office, which was on Arbonaut Road from when we moved into Central. So our gallery space and exhibition space were separate. And then we combined, and now this month we're combining the two together, which is really exciting. And yeah, so Young Soy did quite well. And then this year in March, we launched a new brand called VAIN Projects, because what could be more vain than setting up a second gallery, right? So with VAIN Projects, the goal was to work with slightly more established artists, because with Young Soy, the focus was on emerging artists. But this amazing problem happened, which is a lot of our artists were starting to outprice themselves for what we considered as appropriate for Young Soy Gallery.
Okay.
But at the same time, we didn't want Young Soy to turn its back on its core values, which was working with emerging artists in a certain price range. But we also didn't want to lose the opportunity to continue working with artists who we have established a relationship with, a professional relationship, right? And even they had mentioned, hey, I really don't want to go work with another gallery because I enjoy working with you guys. But at the same time, like, you know, they want to increase their prices, right?
Sure.
And that's completely understandable. So we experimented with the idea of opening up a new brand. Even though they're both under the same house, they're separate brands just in terms of the artist, their price point, and how far along they are in their career as an artist. Now, the interesting thing is that even though we have separate mailing lists, separate Instagram accounts, and that kind of thing, we do have a lot of overlap with the audience and even the artists. So for example, we have some artists that do projects with both. So I would say it's a Venn diagram, but at least that way it allows for Young Soy to be pure to its roots, and it also allows us to not be limited to what we do with Young Soy, you know?
No, I think it's nice. There is one artist I fell in love with, which is Rilla. He created something amazing with the inspiration of the Kellogg's of the cereal, of the baby cereal, that then evolved into something different for a project in VAIN. So you have certain, let's say, a side of our work which is a little bit more playful, even more ironic, more sarcastic in Young Soy, and then this is my interpretation. Sorry, Rilla, if I'm taking it wrong. And then on VAIN, you have things that are maybe a little bit more profound, more adult. I think it's super cool. How do you decide together of who makes this transition between Young Soy and VAIN, or how what is the relationship with the artist from the moment in which you meet with them, maybe for a coffee, for a beer, and you decide that you're going to work together, until how to decide their professional life?
That's a good question. So in terms of how we decide who is represented by VAIN, to be honest, a lot of it is more so from a business angle. Like it comes down to price point, and then it also comes down to the artist experience. So for example, with VAIN Projects, I mean, it's still very new because we launched it this March, so we're still experimenting with it. But the goal would be to not take on any artists that have not had previous experience with a gallery in some way, shape, or form before. Whereas with Young Soy, we're very happy to take on artists that have not had any experience, any professional experience whatsoever. So for example, actually this year we did an exhibition where we were showing 7 artists. Sorry, wrong show. This show we were showing 5 artists, of which one was about to start college, and one was in their one was entering their last year of college, and then the other 3 were graduates. Were just graduating. So it was like a grad show, but again, one artist was just about to start college, so he was 19 years old. He still is 19 years old, and again, I think that's what Young Soy it has the power to do, to work with super young, fresh artists that are just starting their careers. Whereas with Vain, we want to be a little bit more refined. So in terms of how we decide who from Young Soy has gone into Vain, it's really just been based on which artists have been able to increase their prices and justify it through sales and things like that, as well as that have a more refined vision in terms of what it is they're trying to communicate. We're all up for experimentation, but again, I think for an artist to do one style then completely switch to a different style, Young Soy can support that, whereas with Vain, the audience that we garner for Vain, that would be unsettling to them, you know?
Yes.
So, and again, also, I guess for us, we want to help the artist go down the martini glass. I always talk about this martini glass. At the top of the martini glass, it's, you know, you can experiment, you can go a lot wider than you can, but then with Vain, we want it to be down here, where they're starting to really hone in on what it is that their practice is. Yeah, does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Filippo, sorry, I cut you before.
No. Completely right.
oh.
What does Young Soy stand for?
Oh, so Young Soy. Oh yeah, sorry. So Not So Fugly, we rebranded it to Young Soy in November 2020, and Young Soy means ugly in Cantonese. So again, for us, for Xander and I, we're a bit weird, I suppose. For us, like, self-deprecation and making fun of ourselves is really important, because we believe that if you can't laugh at yourself, you shouldn't be able to laugh at anyone or anything else. And the art world to us has historically come off as too serious, where they take it themselves too seriously. And we know a lot of people don't really vibe with that. You know what I mean? So we were like, what if we... and I guess it all started with Art Basel, right? The goal was for it to... in addition to being an exhibition that was cool and welcoming to everyone, we also wanted it to hold up a mirror to the art world so they can engage in satirical reflection, which is a healthy process for anyone to participate in, let alone the art world. And I guess that trait has always been a part of our ethos as a brand, and we've carried it through now even to Vain, right? Calling it Vain because we think it's vain to have a second gallery. And then with Young Soy, it means ugly in Cantonese. So Young Soy, wow, Young Soy, you know, like it basically means like, wow, they're so ugly. And calling an art gallery where you're in theory selling beautiful things ugly to us was just really funny. And Not So Fugly was too on the nose, which became clear to me very soon after. And Xander, to his credit, was like, dude, Not So Fugly is a stupid name. I was like, no, it's going to work. He was like, no, it's not. And then, funnily enough, I met with Simon Birch, who's now, you know, hosts us in his complex as a gallery. He was like, dude, Not So Fugly is so stupid. I went to Xander, I was like, you were right. And then I looked up the translation for ugly in Cantonese, and it was Young Soy. And then I was like, okay, so the phonetics for that is Young Soy. And then Xander was like, okay, this is fine. I'm okay with this. And then so Xander also does the graphic design work for the gallery. So all of our posters, everything is all, you know, from Xander's brain. And like the next day, he just whips up this logo, which is still our logo today.
Yeah,
and
I think we can go by. We have Vain here. This is not. You mean the Young Soy
Young
one?
Soy, that's right.
Young Soy, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. It's a boar with a top hat. And he whips it up in like a matter of hours. And he was like, this is the Young Soy logo. I was like, this is so cool.
No, super. It's super.
Yeah.
I love this. Let's say again, young, militian, revolutionary type of approach to the world of art.
Thank you.
It took me a little bit of time to understand the business model of big players in the art world.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that doesn't belong to the 0.00000 many zeros 1% of the population is something that is a little bit strange and bollocks, and then you can start to understand. And at the same time, you discover that the important players, the one who actually keep the market for themselves, are very few.
Yes.
So how do you tackle this? How do you fight the Goliath of the art world?
That's a really good question. I mean, think about it like this. The art world has, obviously 3 major auction houses. And then in terms of galleries, there's 4 major galleries in the art world that control a lot of the market, as people speculate. And I think there's some truth to it. In terms of how we combat them, we're not in a position yet where we can, because we're so small and the artists we represent are so different, and even their price points are different. Like, I think the shipping for some of the artists that they work with costs more than some of our artists' artwork itself, you know? Like, it is a whole different world. Our goal is very much to help our artists get there and to be able to rival those other artists in terms of how the rest of the world sees and interacts with them. Not like that it's a rivalry or it's a competition or anything, but we just want these artists to be seen as, you know, cultural influences in the world. And before we get there, there's a lot of things that we have to do right. And that's the other thing. The art world lives and breathes reputation. It's very, very easy to destroy reputation. It takes seconds. And to build a reputation takes like 20, 30 plus years. So for us, what it really comes down to is playing the game properly. And even though, I guess for us, we want to change the game, right? Change the rules of the game. In order to do that, you have to play the game first. And I guess for us, we're still trying to figure out how we as a gallery fit into the world. What is our role that we can do in such a unique way that no other gallery could? And I think there's a few different things that allows us to have the audience that we have so far, and also attract the artists that we attract. And that is that supreme inclusion is another core value of our brand. And we want to make sure that everyone always feels welcome at our show, because it's not just about interacting with the artwork, but it's also about interacting with each other, which is why when people come to our shows, we always say, talk to at least one person here who you don't know and ask them about their favorite or least favorite work of art. And then going back to the art side, that's even, you know, that's obviously such a big part of it. However, when you go to certain gallery environments, it's such a cold and intimidating environment that you have defense barriers, and that defense barrier separates you from the art. Because, you know, if you don't have a defense barrier, then the art can take you places. It can take you off on experiences that you never thought you would have had. But when you're intimidated, you cannot have that experience because there's something in the way. And I think a lot of that comes from the environment that is created in a space like a gallery. And for us as a gallery, we try very hard to make sure that people do not have to subconsciously have these defense barriers up, so that, again, they can experience the artwork that the artist in the way that the artist intended it.
You somehow become a cultural movement because you are approachable. I think people can identify with a Young Soy or Vain as part of who they are, and I think this approach is revolutionary. So I think that the impression that I get is that you in Hong Kong, you play the home game and you master it, because you're funny, but you're very smart, because I see it behind the eyes.
Thank you.
But you're smart, but you're also bold. But because you mentioned it to us when we went to the last opening last week, when I met you, you said, we're trying to work with some artists, even take them to Switzerland because they outgrow their state, their emerging state. I don't know if you were relating to Rilla, or Rilla is one of them. How do you take on that challenge? Because you are out of your home, you're playing the away game. How's the process from the moment in which you sit down, you're having a coffee, and say, let's conquer Switzerland, until you really do it?
That's a good question. So it all started when I met this individual named Camilla Weder, or Camilla Weder, as it's properly pronounced. She's from Zurich. And she was in Hong Kong doing her master's program at HKU back in 2021. So we had a show in 2021 in Kennedy Town at a speakeasy called the Wilshire, which is behind 11 West Side. Great bar. If you guys haven't been, we'll go for a drink.
I haven't
sometime.
been. Where is that? Sorry.
Do you know 11 West Side, the Mexican restaurant in Kennedy Town?
No.
It's very good.
Yeah.
That we need to go, definitely. This or next week. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're back from Zurich, I can tell you about Zurich that way as well. But anyways, it's a really awesome bar. They make some of the best cocktails in Hong Kong. And we used to go there a lot. And one day when I was there, I saw that it would be perfect for an art exhibition. So we contacted the owner. He was like, absolutely, let's do it. We'll have fun. We'll even make curated cocktails specific to each artist. We were like, let's do it. That sounds sick. So we did the show there. The show was very well received. This girl, Camilla, came to that show with one of her friends who was actually exhibiting. They got to know each other through HKU because this artist that we were showing was a master's student at HKU for architecture, actually, funnily enough. And I got to know Camilla because she came up to us and was like, this show is amazing. Like, this is so cool. Zurich needs something like this. And we were like, okay, cool. And then we didn't think much of it. We lost touch. And then Camilla came back to Hong Kong November of 2022, just about a year ago. And she came to one of our other shows, which was a show with Peter Yule, a solo exhibition called Echoes with Peter Yule. And she was like, oh, this is so cool, blah, blah, blah. And then before she left Hong Kong that trip, her and I went for a drink, and she was like, can I bring this to Zurich? I was like, okay. And she's like, no. What I mean is, like, can we do an exhibition together in Zurich? I will help you out. I will find the space. I will put together a list of contacts. I will get sponsors, so on and so forth. And then I was like, if you're actually serious, then why not, you know? Fast forward to January and February this year, and we started talking. We found a space. It was in our price range of what we think we could afford for a project like this. And then we put together the artists, and then next thing you know, we're headed to Zurich in 3 days from today to do this exhibition. And the reason why we took Camilla up on her offer is because, first of all, Xander and I, through our experience of project leaders in the art world through our gallery, oftentimes people didn't take us seriously, and people still today don't take us seriously, and that's fine, you know. But at the same time, we did not want to carry that forward. Someone who has no experience in the art world, Camilla, she's very smart, but doesn't have experience in the art world, just like Xander and I did not when we first started doing the gallery. Yet we could see the passion and motivation that she had. And we thought that it would be an opportunity lost to not take her up on her offer, you know? So with that, we put it together. We've been working together as partners on this specific exhibition, which will be under Vain Projects. And we're really excited. And then more than that, the reasoning was like, Hong Kong and Zurich is very similar in many ways, you know? Both cities are quite wealthy cities, and I think as a result, art has played a prominent role in both of them. I mean, Hauser and Wirth, or as Camilla says, Hauser and Wirth, is one of the world's largest galleries, right? It's one of the big four I mentioned earlier. They're originally from Zurich, if I'm not mistaken. And, like Zurich has always had a very prominent role in the art world. It's where Dada was born, which is like a prolific art movement. It's where Zukunft, the nightclub, is, which is an institution. So there's a lot of cool creative energy in Zurich. But at the same time, what Camilla shared with us, which is why she wanted to bring this there, is that the art world is very mature, and there's not a lot of young galleries that are doing something in a way that gets people excited. You know, a lot of it is similar to Hong Kong in the sense where a lot of it is commercially driven. And while obviously we are a business and we want to make sales, we also want to do it in a way that allows us to honor the artists and honor the audience, right? Like having a DJ there, having a bar, making sure that people are interacting, creating that environment is really important. And that, I think that's what Camilla noticed through our shows that we did in Hong Kong. And she said that Zurich, especially the young people there, would benefit from experiencing art in this way, because a lot of people that she knew in Zurich were into art but didn't go to galleries and things much because, again, there wasn't an experience that really felt like it, I guess, pulled them there. You know, it was disenfranchising in a way, which is, again, similar to Hong Kong. And so we thought if this could really benefit people in Zurich and the art scene there, and it allows us to get exposure for our artists that we work with in a completely different market, why not? There was just a lot of boxes that allowed us to check off, if you will, for justifying investing so much time, energy, and resources into doing something so outrageous. You know, like, don't get me wrong, do I think this is the smartest decision we've ever made? Absolutely not. Do I think we would regret it if we didn't do it? 100%, right? And sometimes you just have to go for it and take the leap and see what happens.
I want to push back. I think I disagree with you. I think it's a very smart idea, actually. If you think about, let's say, the concept.
I hope you're right, by the way.
No. I think there is a clear link between art and luxury and the luxury sector, if you actually analyze the little but surely firm and they're here to stay changes that the luxury sector is undergoing, you realize that, you know, first it was Gucci who changed how big fashion houses used to market their products and even create their products.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about 6-7 years ago, in which suddenly Gucci decided that luxury was not going to be serious and boring, but it was going to be bold and daring and in your face, you know, with embroidered tigers the size of my head,
Right.
in the jacket. So they started, and then everyone kind of followed. You know, you see even Hermes, that they are like super fancy, super clean, super pure. That now they're doing fitness clothes.
Right.
I mean, for them it's a big leap. You know,
100%.
or even, for example, the big watch houses.
Mm.
If you see what Audemars Piguet did last year with the music, I don't know if you're familiar with this. They did a dial of a royal oak, which is like how to say, the level display of volume, you know, with green, yellow, and red. And they did a watch that cost 35,000 euro with that background. And what I'm trying to say is that they realize that the audience they're talking to, their public, is totally different. It's changing, and they want a different experience, and they want to be bold, and they want to, you know, get out of the box in which art is supposed to be made in. So I think it's super nice. My only problem with new technologies and with this new approach, and this is something that maybe is a little bit more technical, but I want your take on it. It's about frequency of promotion.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world in which, if you follow everyone that is trying to have a strategy on social media, it's all about a lot of content all the time for a very short period of time. And you see a lot of racing stars reaching high levels of success very soon, but somehow they kind of die out. Now, how do you manage this? What is the success for you in developing an artist? Do you force yourself to, I don't know, do you hold yourself back when it comes to promotion? Do you dose this exposure, or do you think that it pays off to just make a big effort and just maximize while the metal is hot?
I don't think this is spoken about enough, so I'm super glad you brought it up. Okay, first of all, we're living in a world where we consume so much information that I think it's unhealthy, okay? Because of that, what we see a lot of is spikes. And I think actually the NFT story is a perfect example of this. Look at what happened to NFTs. You could pick up NFTs for quite cheap, like in, 2020. When it came to 2021, these NFTs were reaching prices of millions of dollars. The next year, I mean, like, for example, a week or two ago, there was a report that came out that said 95% of NFTs are worthless, right? So that literally came and went. Now, the whole NFT thing, I have a whole other thought on it, and I think that it could come back at some point. Not now, or not in the near future. But anyways, I think what happened is that the hype took the prices so high, and it brought them down even faster. And I think that's what happens a lot when you over promote something, right? Look at one-hit wonders. In music and pop music, a lot of bands and artists, they'll do one song that goes, it's like a huge hit. It's every top chart around the world, and then you'll never hear of that artist ever again, right? That artist is doing, while they're on those top charts, they're doing every talk show. They're doing ads for Nike and Haagen-Dazs and diapers or whatever it is, right? But then 6 months later, you've never heard of them. And I think that's part of the problem, is that when it comes to the creative world, and that means anything in the creative world, and I think you could even draw parallels from this to, for example, things like real estate or other asset classes, is that if it goes up too fast, it's going to come down just as fast, if not faster. So what people have to do is make sure that it's a slow burn, that it goes up at a very slow rate, because that's what is sustainable in that sense. Because if it goes up too fast, it makes it unstable. But if it goes up slowly and, it's somewhat controlled, then that way, there will always be demand for it, in my opinion. And also at the same time, by it happening slowly, you can also help nurture and I guess look after whatever it is in the right way. I'll give you an example. So there's this famous gallerist from LA, Mr. Poe, from Blum and Poe Gallery, and he was saying how artists' careers nowadays last like 5 to 6 months, because of how fast, I guess, exactly what we're talking about. And one of the ways that a lot of galleries combat that is that they only sell to, which again, I have a lot of thoughts on this as well. They only sell to their collectors that they know and can trust, that aren't going to go to an auction house the next day and try to flip it for 10x the value. They'll only sell to people who basically more or less verbally, or sometimes even written in a written statement, agree to not selling the piece in a public market of some sort for a minimum of 3 years, right? That way they know that that painting is sold, it's off the market, and it cannot go in the hands of another buyer for at least 3 years. And that's how they kind of slowly and steadily control this, because this has happened in the art world multiple times, where an artist's work is flipped at auction for like 10 times what they bought it for, and then the next day no one else wants it, and the artist's career is basically done because now their prices are so high, unrealistically so, and no one's willing to pay for it, right? And then if you drop your prices to anyone who's paid those high prices, you're basically giving them two middle fingers, right? So it becomes very difficult, which is why, again, having that slow, steady burn makes a lot more sense. And I think that's the best way to control it. Now, I know your question is also about over-promotion, but I think over-promotion, I think these spikes or one-hit wonders are a byproduct of over-promotion in a way, and not caring for a creative individual or asset of any sort, and instead looking for a quick buck. I think oftentimes we have to balance on the edge of this razor blade, which is, okay, of course we want it to be commercially viable, but at the same time we also don't want to compromise the beauty and true value of what this artist or this, whatever it is, has to offer to the world. And in terms of finding the right balance, I think it comes down to a case-by-case scenario. And to be honest, for us, we are still trying to figure it out. However, we also, I think it's a good problem to have if there's so much demand for something, and you have to try so hard to be like, okay, as much as we could really use the money, or, like selling it and whatever it is, 10xing, we have to keep in mind that this will destroy this artist's career if we try to do that. And also at the same time, it will ruin our reputation, right? So it's not sacrificing the urgent for the important. It's about keeping the important in mind and letting the urgent wash over, so to speak.
No, makes a lot of sense. I'm going to say something extremely vain, but I got this experience when I was organizing parties in China. I did one time. I had an event called Fuck the Weekends, which was a party on a Wednesday. I had this idea that partying on a Wednesday was the best thing ever. So we did one, and it was a super big success. So the owner of the club came to me and said, I want you to do it more times. I'm like, okay, fine. We can think about doing it, once every couple of months, once every 3 months, maximum once a month. He wanted to do it once per week. And I told him, next week you'll have maybe 60% of the people. 2 weeks from now you'll have maybe 2 or 3. And then in 3 weeks, no one will care. People will avoid coming to the party. Slowly but surely it happened what I said, and I had to step away. But it's a very refreshing, and my soul rests a little bit more in peace by listening to someone like you, having a clear vision of the risks that we get into by being too eager,
yes,
too greedy. Filippo wanted to say something before.
To a profane of the arts world, it really sounds like you are an incubator, if I have to translate it in business term. The other thing that I want to ask, how much does an artist let himself be nurtured by you? What are the areas that you can actually nurture an artist, and how far can you do it?
Okay, interesting. Well, first, Filippo, before I answer your question, I just want to say, Fernando, that for us, we have had the problem where we do too many shows back to back and people lose interest. And I think familiarity breeds resentment sometimes. And I think that's the case. And we're also trying to learn from our mistakes to make sure that we don't do too many. So, we've had to learn this through our mistakes, and we're still trying to refine that even further. Now, Filippo, going to your question. Yes, in many ways, we are like an incubator for the artists. And actually, I met someone who runs a startup incubator in Hong Kong, and I was sharing with them what we do as a gallery. And he was like, we pretty much do the same thing, but you work with artists and we work with technology startups. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Is that like a flex or, But, he's a super cool guy, and he's actually one of our collectors. So shout out to him. But, yes, in many ways it is like an incubator. And actually, what I was saying earlier, it's about believing in the not in the art but the artist. I actually stole that from some incubator person at some point, or some VC, where they're like, don't believe in the business, believe in the entrepreneur, right? And I think in many ways it's a similar approach. I think the person is what carries through, not necessarily the idea, because artists can pivot, right? And again, with Young Soy, the whole brand is set up for it to be more forgiving, and so that artists can be more experimental. And if one idea doesn't work, as long as the artist is willing to try a new idea, we're all for it. We'll still back it. Now, in terms of artists and how willing they are to be nurtured by us or to take our advice, it depends on the artist. Some artists are like, tell me what you guys want and I'll make it. And if you think it sells, let's do it. So somewhere like they literally give us as much control as we want, which is nice, but also at the same time we're like, no. You're the artist. Do what you want to do, and we can advise you based on our experience of selling work in Hong Kong and working with other artists. So it really depends. Whereas some artists, we tell them like, oh, okay, we should do it like this, or what are your thoughts on this? Like, no, that's not true to my vision. That's not this, that's not that. So it really depends on the artist. There's no right or wrong. However, I would say what it comes down to, and maybe perhaps where we're different from, being an incubator, is that we see working with artists as a partnership. It's a collaboration, right? And collaborations and partnerships, as you both know yourselves, are built on trust. Mm-hmm. And trust plays a huge role in that. So as much as we trust our artists that we're working with, not only on the creative side, but also on the business side and things like that, we want them to trust us as well. And that when we're saying things, we're not saying it from a malicious point of view, or a greedy point of view, but more so a point of view that could benefit both sides, right? And it really depends again on the artist. But again, the ones that we really like working with, and the ones that we have been working with for years, it's because we have that really good working relationship. There's chemistry professionally between both parties, and both sides are open to each other's ideas, and that's what makes for not only it increases the potential for success, but it also makes the work side of it fun, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in doing what you enjoy, or what has the least amount of sting in it, right? And when you have to work with people like you do in the art world for hours and hours at a time on end, or days or weeks, especially artists who can all be a bit crazy sometimes, you want to make sure that you get along and that you can have fun and that you have banter and you can make jokes, things like that, So again, it goes back to the right partnership, and that's what we really look for with the artists that we work with. Now, just to give you guys an idea, in case you're interested, when it comes to us giving them advice and things like that, we try not to focus so much on the creative side, but we will give them things like, for example, okay, in Hong Kong, keep in mind, homes here are small. So if you're looking for people to buy your work, if you're going to do a 2 meter by 2 meter piece, don't expect anyone to buy it, because no one can even fit that in the lift to go up,
Yep.
Let alone on their walls. So like we'll tell them things like that, we won't really go beyond that. In terms of what their actual content is, we definitely try not to get involved in that, unless it's something that we think can cause a lot of backlash. Like if it's something very politically driven, we're like, hey, whoa, take it easy, okay? But otherwise, we're pretty, simple when it comes to giving them advice. And then also things like, helping them with titles, what to call the show, simple things like that. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Let's say I like the fact that you are artist-centered gallery. Do you feel that because of the COVID isolation, you have more trouble finding people in the talent pool? Like, are there less artists, or you don't feel the effect at all? How has the closure of Hong Kong compared to Switzerland, New York, London affected the city and the future of the city in the next 3-5 years?
Sure. So COVID sucked, right? Like, it was so bad. But at the same time, if it wasn't for COVID, Xander and I would have never started Young Soy. My plan for 2020 was to travel the world, do like an Eat, Pray, Love type thing, But then because we were stuck here and no one was hiring in video production, that's when we decided to start the gallery. And because everyone was locked in Hong Kong pretty much because of 3-week quarantine, and because a lot of times even dining was like limited to 4 people to 10 p.m., sometimes 2 people to 6 p.m., things like that, a lot of people weren't spending money, right? They were not spending money on travel, nor were they spending a lot of money on dining out. So therefore, they were spending more time at home and they had a lot of disposable income. Now, because they were spending more time at home, they wanted to upgrade their homes a little bit, of which art is a vehicle of doing. And in addition to that, they had the disposable income. So for us as a new gallery in Hong Kong, supporting Hong Kong artists, people were very much behind the idea of it, and they had the money to back it up, right? So during COVID, it was jet fuel for us. It was amazing. It was a silver lining to being locked in Hong Kong and not being able to explore the rest of the world, and obviously have the rest of the world come and explore Hong Kong. However, when COVID restrictions ceased in Hong Kong and people were traveling again, that's when we start to notice things slowing down. Now, in addition to that, not only were people starting to spend more money on dining out and traveling, mostly traveling, and as you've seen, air ticket prices in and out of Hong Kong are stupid high, right? So because of that, people were spending less money in art. People also kind of got burnt out spending money in art during COVID. And this is global. And this is like the auction houses. If you see what the auction houses did during COVID, it's insane. I'm fairly certain they broke a lot of records because, again, this was something around the world. So because of that, a lot of people are kind of arted out in terms of buying art. And then obviously macroeconomic environment across the globe is not exactly encouraging of spending money on non-essentials, which is what art is. As you say, no matter how affordable art is, it's a luxury good, which again I have thoughts on, but it is, right, at the end of the day. And it's purely want-based, not need-based. So because of that, the art market is slowing down a little bit now. However, in Hong Kong, more than the global art market, I think in Hong Kong what's affected it is people traveling outside of Hong Kong and spending their money on holidays. And who are we to judge that? Because they've been locked down in Hong Kong for years, right? And that's actually also part of the reason why we're looking as a business to spend our time and energy outside Hong Kong, which is why we're going to Zurich to explore a different market. And then when we come back from Zurich, a week later, we hop on a plane to Singapore to do Affordable Art Fair Singapore under Young Soy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to share the pain, I can tell you that in my daytime job, which is where, working in a lighting company, and which was an industry that lived a surge during 2021, 2022, man, the slam on the brakes has been drastic now.
Yeah.
Because people, they just want to be outside their home, and I understand what they're doing, and I understand that it'll take a bit to come back to the levels that we had in 2020. But that's totally normal. It makes sense. Do you think, and this of course now we're talking opinions, and forecasting, astrology in a sense,
right?
Are we going to see Hong Kong back? I started the podcast using the adjective sparkly. Are we going to be sparkly, effervescent again since we were in 2018? When do you think this is going to happen?
That's a great question. I think it will definitely happen because I've been in Hong Kong again. Like I said, even though I was in school in the US for a long time, I've been in Hong Kong pretty much my whole life. And, I've been hearing this so many times throughout my life. People said, oh, in 1997, Hong Kong's done. Oh, no. People said after SARS, Hong Kong's done. Hong Kong is a rubber ball. You throw it to the ground, the harder you throw it, the higher it's going to bounce back up. That's what I genuinely believe. I saw that from my dad, actually. He's the one who said that. So, and he's not wrong in that sense. I mean, Hong Kong is so resilient that it is actually quite scary. And you know what's hilarious is that all these other cities in Asia, first of all, compare themselves to Hong Kong. Singapore, Shanghai, Shenzhen, all these other cities compare themselves to Hong Kong. Funnily enough, Hong Kong never compares itself to these cities, especially Singapore. And whatnot. And part of the reason for that is because all these other cities want to be like Hong Kong because Hong Kong is in an elite class amongst two other cities, New York and London. New York, London, Hong Kong. Time magazine did a piece on this several years ago. The article was called Nylon Kong, New York, London, Hong Kong. And it talked about how those three cities are in an elite class of their own when it comes to cities, that those are the global epicenters, right, of the entire world, those three cities. Everything else is not a tier 1 city. They are still tier 1 cities, but they're not part of this, elite force of cities that literally control so much of what happens in the world through a business sense and, beyond business as well. So Hong Kong has obviously been hurt. Oh, Seoul is another one that they try to compare Hong Kong to, especially in the art world. They just said Seoul, freeze Seoul and whatnot, and they're like, oh, is it coming for Hong Kong? Oh my God, Hong Kong should be afraid. And everyone in Hong Kong is like, yeah, right. And someone really smart, I forget who, got interviewed in Seoul, and they were like, how can you even compare Hong Kong and Seoul? Like, they're such different cities, first of all, which they are, and they have such individual roles to play in the art market and in the art world. And I couldn't agree with that more. But anyways, Hong Kong will bounce back. I think it's going to take time. And I think part of the reason for that is because Western media outlets are spinning such a negative view on Hong Kong that when I speak to people in the Western world, whether they're in Europe or North America, even Australia, they're like, oh my God, what's going on in Hong Kong? Are you safe? I'm like, you're calling me from America and you're asking me if I'm safe. Like, are you for real right now? So I think the media has a huge role to play in it. And unfortunately, that's out of our control. I think a lot of it is also politically driven, which I don't think is fair to people in Hong Kong, right? I think like in the US, a lot of these media outlets have their own agenda. However, at the same time, I think Hong Kong is impossible for it to only be represented by what Western media says. So, for example, people have already started coming in and out of Hong Kong again, which is great. It's a matter of time before the word of mouth spreads. Because anyone who's come to Hong Kong, for example, the DJ that played last night at that club we were talking about, I was asking him, I was like, what do you think of Hong Kong? And he was like, it's amazing. I love it. I can't believe, this and that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You're fucking right. It's amazing. It's one of the greatest cities on earth. And he's going to go back and tell his friends, right, and his family and things like that. And I think it's a matter of time before that starts to spread a little bit and people stop listening to everything they hear in the news and things like that. But again, that will take time. So my guess is 2024 post-summer, so exactly 1 year from now, is when I think we'll start to feel and see Hong Kong as it used to be once again. That's my guess, which is about 18 months after they got rid of masks. Okay. So the last reminiscent piece of COVID, if you will, in Hong Kong, a year and a half later, and I think we'll start to feel somewhat normal again.
I have to agree with you. I don't know the schedule, I don't know the timetable, but last year I was one of those people who thought that maybe the future was away from Hong Kong. I like being in Asia. My work is here. My family is here. So, the options were Singapore, Bangkok. I even thought about Seoul when, in a, let's say, suspension of my rational abilities. But then you realize that, now I did a tour back in Singapore and Bangkok. And as much as I love those cities and I lived in Bangkok for 3 years, there is just no fucking way they can be compared. And Seoul,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Seoul. Every time I go, and I have to be there in a couple of weeks,
Mhm.
just the thought of going from Incheon airport to the city just kills me. It's
Uh-huh.
just not gonna happen.
You wanna say to our soul listener that we love the city, though?
No. We just hate. Yes, yes. This is Fernando having a zero marketing skill strategy, but we are genuine and we are sincere. I want to ask you a favor,
Sure.
because we have been talking about your professional side, and I think you've given me a lot of information. I love the conversation, but I want to
Likewise.
know, what does a gallery co-founder own in terms of art? Which art do you buy?
Oof, that is a really good question. Okay, so myself personally, I'll talk about my personal collection off the top of my head. Um, from what I can remember, because I also collect a lot of really small little things. And actually, it's really bad because if you see the walls in my bedroom, they're quite bare, not put together well, but there's a lot of holes because I'm constantly taking things off, moving them around, and things like that. And I love the idea of gallery walls. Gallery wall meaning a lot of small pieces, um, almost like in an orchestra together on the wall to create one installation, if you will. I love those. And I think, especially in a home environment, it's really cool because you can tell your own story through multiple little stories told by different artists in their work. So let me try to remember what I have. Okay, I have 2 Peter Yule originals. A lot of the art I own is by artists that we represent, but not all the art I have is by artists we represent. Actually, 2-3 days ago, I went to Waka Artisans in PMQ, which is run by an artist that we work with, his wife's mother, and they basically work with a lot of Japanese artists that do ceramic goods, and I bought a plate from there, which is really cool. I was like, what can I do with the plate? And Benson Koo, the artist, he was like, oh, you can use it for sushi, you can use it for all kinds of things. I usually use it for McDonald's, like chicken nuggets. I was like, okay, cool. I also have a Tyler Jackson Pritchard, who's one of the first artists that we started representing.
No, I'm just going on the Instagram page. I was trying to look for this exactly.
Oh yeah, that's Peter Yule right there. I actually went surfing with him like literally 2 hours ago, right before I came here. I was surfing with Peter, my business partner, and another creative person in Hong Kong named Ollie Rogers, who runs a skateboard magazine called Likewise. Fun group, very random group, but very fun. So the one I have actually doesn't have the gold pigment, but it's a piece similar to this. He's a very talented artist, and his work and what he does through his artwork is so different from his as him as an individual. Him as an individual is like an eccentric character, but in his artwork, it's very, very peaceful. It's very simple in a way, and also it requires a lot of patience because he's doing circles all day long with his hand. So.
I think it's a great challenge when it's very admirable when people like this decide to base their style on an idea that is so restrictive.
Yeah.
And I've been to one of his exhibitions. I think it was in Soho House a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
To where I went actually with Espen.
Oh, nice.
I went together with Espen, and I like when someone takes a very restricted idea and decides to decline that in a number of times. That's why I love this artist so much. And yes, now I forgot about him because happens in life, and then now you came here, now you study, and now I think I'm gonna spend some money as well too.
Yeah,
so,
nice.
no,
We'll
that's
take good care of
fantastic.
you. Don't you
It's
worry.
okay, it's okay.
Also, by the way, fun story. So Espen Cook was
Yes.
one of the original artists from F. Art Basel. He was going to be one of the artists for that, which is how I know
I'm
him.
not surprised.
Yeah. Espen, do you know Club Kowloon?
Oh yes,
Yeah, so Club Kowloon used to do some amazing parties as well, which was Espen's.
I agree. I have one shirt of
Me
Cloud
too.
Kowloon, yes,
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
that they did with embroidery, which now I would love to have one with just bold big letters instead of just the small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were super nice. They were streaming sets during COVID,
Oh,
very
okay.
nicely with the cameras and everything. Because it was so Club Kowloon was mainly Espen and Jürgen.
Yeah,
The
that's right.
but I think Jürgen left already. Did you meet
No,
him?
I know him.
Yeah, super nice guy from Norway as well. They was in Prince Edward,
Yeah.
very nice environment. Um,
Huh.
they made me feel young. No, thank you very much. This is we will take some of this from what you said, and I think a lot of people that watch the podcast, especially my auntie and my mom,
Uh-huh.
will get on to buy something similar from what you just told us. Shivang, I have you know when I realize a conversation goes very well, when I realized that we both wrote many things and we touched not even half of it.
Oh, nice. That's
Um,
good.
But this is a good opportunity for me to call you and maybe have you here once you come back, and maybe in 6, 8, 12 months, and we catch up, because I enjoyed very much this conversation. I think Filippo, thank you very much for introducing
Yeah,
me to
thank
him.
you.
It was fantastic. This be this first of many.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. And thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to listen to all of your podcasts in the future.
Okay, and before I forget, for the loyal customers that stayed all the way to the end, this is something serious, and we give away 5% discount for people that go to winenot.com.hk, which is the fastest and most reliable wine and spirits distributor in Hong Kong.
Nice.
So if people use last meet code, that is LS. I don't know how to speak today. Like, my brain today is super slow. We cannot do podcast on a Monday, because then I cannot get things in motion. LASTMEET. That's at checkout for 5% discount. And because I think it's a nice courtesy, and you have been the best speaker I could have hoped for,
Thank you.
I give you the last word and the closure for the podcast.
Thank you very much, everyone who listened to our episode today. And my one last word is Habibi.
That's a perfect wrap. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shivam.
Thank you very much.
Ole. No, you made the motion.